been 4 years since the tragedy occurred at Mother Emanuel Ame Church here in downtown Charleston. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I speak exclusively with Liz Alston, the church's historian, one-on-one. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Liz Alston, it's so good to see you here back on Quintin's Close-Ups.
It's better to see you.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. And it's been a busy couple of days, and I'm running around like crazy. You're running around like crazy. I don't have a blazer on. But there's so much to talk about in regards to your beloved Mother Emanuel Ame Church.
You got that right.
Where do we begin in your mind?
Well, I tell you, when I knew you were coming, I just got yesterday's paper, not today's, and cut out 5 articles. Yesterday, the public interest is certainly in Emanuel, and I was taken back by Andy Savage's ad. And he said, June 17, 2015, I can see it here, the world donated millions to the church for the benefit of the victims. Where did the money go? As a member of Emanuel and was a member of the trustee board, I asked those same questions. We don't get answers. So the world wants to know, where is the money? And maybe the public is asking this, so this would probably be a very good question to answer. And so since we have been asking for answers, now the public is asking.
And you know, when I talked with Andy Savage last week for Quintin's Close-Ups, I basically asked him, how did the church forsake these victims? When you look back at 2015 to now, what is the relationship now with the victims and the church, particularly the survivors?
If you ask me, I go to church every Sunday. I used to go every day, but because of the current leadership, don't go. And I am in concert with a lot of the victims and families.
True.
And they have many of the same questions.
Mm.
Where is everything? Why aren't we more transparent about what's happening at Emanuel? I go to the board meetings and quarterly conferences and church conferences, and as members, we are sometimes tried to be shut out. That is correct.
Where are you emotionally with that, being shut out? You've been in this church for 50 plus years.
I've been in the church for 50 years, and I stand up before the conferences, and I voice my concerns. I suppose, like a lot of ministers, they put people in place who are yes people, and people who during the regular course of a day are not involved in leadership capacities. But on Sunday mornings, their chest is out and they're strutting around, and many of their actions do not benefit the church.
The church, with all this going on as far as the church leadership and questions about where the money went, how is the church's congregation? Where is the population, for lack of a better word, in your mind?
Well, I go to church every day, and as the church's historian, sometimes I'm put on the second shelf. But I take notes. The congregation's population is dwindling. So many people leave the church. And you must understand the culture of African Americans. Many, not me of course, many of us, minus me, grew up thinking that ministers are appointed by God, and many of the older members and middle-aged people believe that to question the minister is blasphemy. So they are caught in their cultural confines and just don't speak against the minister, even though they may not share the same philosophy and objectives. And so many people are leaving. In our quarterly conferences, we say we have 500 members. People say, where do they go? I've been asking, I would like to see validation of these areas because each week people leave. There was a young lady who was a Sunday school superintendent and has been in many leadership positions in the church, and she leaves. So on Sunday morning, well, sometimes the church is filled with visitors. Yesterday was June 16th. That's a classic example. It was filled with visitors, but where are the members? They are just absent. And I'm not talking about the traditional era where people just don't go to church anymore, but Emanuel is different. We're supposed to be the forgiveness church. But that's on paper. That's not the way that things are done in meetings and at churches on area. So I can speak from experience and got documentation to prove it.
But then, how do you define forgiveness now?
Well, forgiveness, and so many people are writing about forgivenesses even as we speak.
Sure.
Last Thursday there was a book, Grace Will Lead Us Home, the forgiveness book. But sometimes you'll find that in many of the instances, most of the survivors do not come to church. Many of the families, I think about one or two families would come, but many of them do not come to church, or do not come to Emanuel. Some go to Second Presbyterian, some goes to Mount Zion on Glebe Street, and many others because of the area of forgiveness, which is a national phenomenon, but it's not practiced at home.
At home? Why isn't it practiced at home, in your mind?
I think it has to do with the leadership, with the fightfulness, the businessness of the church, that part of it, and maybe the fact that we are on world stage, and so sometimes people put best on the outside. But as I said, article after article about the paper, and I think more will be coming out. So hopefully, I love the church. A lot of people leave. I'm not going to let anyone run me from my church. I'm going to stay until the cows come home. But it's a good question. Forgiveness means different things to different people. I am now, as I said on a previous interview, I believe now what I pray in the Our Father prayers. Father, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Okay.
So forgiveness for some people, and I've heard so many people say forgiveness is a process. When the shooter killed 9 of our members on June 17th of 2015, the crying out was, I forgive you. And I think that is placed in history. The next day, the shooter was caught in Sheldon, North Carolina, and so forgiveness became the attitude. And so many people come to Emanuel because of that fact. Reverend Goff, Elder Goff, was the person who was there. And so now many of the people at Emanuel who go on these pilgrimages with these people, they weren't there on June 15th. I certainly just probably abhor the fact that Elder Goff is not included in many of the activities of the church, because he was there and he took us through that difficult period for about 6 to 7 months.
Right.
And then we had another minister who lasted for about 5 months. And now for 3 years we have been under the leadership of the current minister.
How do you describe the current minister to the outside person right now?
I stand on the Fifth Amendment.
Let me turn to the movie. I know you watched it last night. I'm going to actually head over to the Mount Pleasant Town Center tonight to watch it on my own. Is there something in that movie that you wish you would have known 4 years ago that you didn't know now?
Well, yeah, it's just like anything else. Nobody knows the hour of the day that we will depart. And I think that the Lord has something to do with it. Certainly, had we known this fateful day, who knows what precautions would have done if that was the way that things are done. And certainly, I'm not a minister, did not go to divinity school, somewhat of a highly opinionated pessimist. I certainly adhere to the philosophy of Schopenhauer and Nietzsche. So, therefore, my opinions are probably hardened. If you know the history of my life, I have been in battles all my life. And so I'm probably not the person to ask about that, because had we foresee, and I read the reviews, watch everything, document everything. So there have been some criticisms of the movie that, whites are the one telling our story. I've heard that before. But I'm saying if it were not for the outside, then the present story would probably not be as forthcoming as it is. I think it's far too early to make any kinds of evaluations. I'm going to have to let it sink in a little before I would probably make some decisions, what's going to happen. Well, like, I'm glad today is the 17th, exactly 4 years. Who knows what will happen tomorrow? And so I'm just saying is that my strength is, faith that has carried me thus far. And I think at a luncheon on last Thursday, we were talking about courage. And I say this often and not, and I do speak to a lot of audiences. Courage is not the strength to go on, but going on when you have no strength. And I think that embodies my feelings about the area. Of course, like I said, I may adhere to the philosophy of Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, but even though I'm saying some people look at the glass half empty, some look at the glass half full, I think I'm in the middle. I don't bury my head in the sand. I take my lumps up front, and I just want to wait to see what happens. But like I'm saying is that the world is taking notice of what's happening at Mother Emanuel. I do hope that those persons in leadership will at least look at the current situation and have the courage to do what is right for this church that's suffering in this. 4 years now, the people are still grieving. People are still not coming to church. What needs to be done? I feel that the hierarchy of the Ame Church is different. In other words, the public and the church people have no input into it. Everything is made by the bishop. So when we get someone, it's someone that we don't know. We have had no input in the selection process, and that is a part of the problem.
What is the relationship of the bishop with your church?
Well, there are over 600 Ame churches in South Carolina. Emanuel is the oldest Ame church south of the Mason-Dixon line. Our history is being scattered by people who are not, probably even don't know the history. And the bishop comes often, but I don't see him. I've only met with him once or twice. So I would say that he is also the bishop appoints presiding elders. And like I said, we have a presiding elder who presides over 33 churches in the Edisto district, because the church is broken into districts.
Right.
Even in Charleston, we have a number of districts. You have the Charleston district.
Right.
You have the Edisto district.
Right.
You have the Palmetto District. You have the districts in the Columbia District. So, which means with 600 churches, I would say that his dealings with Emanuel is something that I'm not really privy to. So I guess I've seen him come to preach at various functions. And if Emanuel is on the list, he comes. I see him when ministers, Ame ministers die. I feel that I don't think that I could be wrong, his affiliation or administration with Emanuel is probably the same as it is with Mount Zion or Morris Brown. They're in different districts. But I think that's a good question to ask the bishop.
You talked earlier about the churches, obviously the congregation, how it's dwindling. How many of the lifelong members like yourself are leaving?
A few, a lot of them are leaving. And the ones who haven't left, they just don't come. On a typical Sunday morning, like yesterday was different. We had about maybe 500 or 600 people in the church. And I tried to count the members. I count maybe 45, 50 at the most. And that would include members of the choir, the officers of the church there. But the members are few and far between. And I talked to many of them, and Liz, I don't want to come. I don't like the way that things are going. And so I don't know what the history of the Ame Church is going to be under the current situation.
This current situation, Liz, obviously you've been a principal, you've been a teacher, a Charleston County School Board chairwoman, which was historic. Obviously you're an icon in this neighborhood, in this community. You talked earlier about the struggles of the church. Is this your toughest struggle yet?
I think so, because I am spiritually connected. And while the other struggles have been almost generic, but this is spiritual. And I'm saying is that I grew up, and I think part of my struggle is that if you don't respect the person, you respect the position. So it's very difficult to have some consternation in the church. Today is June 17th, which means in 7 days, we had, and I could pull it up on my phone, about a struggle that we had in the church on June 24th, and those issues are yet unresolved. So yes, having been chair of school board principal, chair of the tourism commission,
Right.
chair of I serve on hospital boards,
Right.
and my leadership skills are not recognized in my own church. And so, yes, I'm struggling with that, and I feel that, like Sam Cooke says, a change is going to have to come.
Liz Alston, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
I do too. I wish that my comments could have been more congenial or satisfying. But like I said, every day I pick up the paper and it says, many people are saying, why did your church forsake them? Why is my church forsaking me? Maybe that's a question at our next interview that I can ask with a more positive relationship. But right now, why do the church forsake most of the members? I hope God will help me in reaching a conclusion that will make me feel better going to my beloved church.
What is that biblical scripture that you would go to right now to point to this whole situation?
Well, now you're not, so which means that it's saying that there's so many, forsaking, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I think that maybe forgiveness should be a bigger part in it. I am not, uh, as I said, I'm not struggling. I'm standing in the forefront. I will stand up for what is right. I will, even if my church is not for me, but I'm going to be for my church. That's about the best I can put it.
Well, thank you very much.